Why does my nose always itch when I record these videos? Okay. Hi, welcome back. I'm Celeste and this video is called May Ins and Outs. Basically, there's a regular feature that I do on my blog, Bookish and Belle, which you can find in a link down below, where I talk about, just briefly, the books that I bought in the last month and also the books that I completed in the last month. And I thought I would try doing it as a video feature this month, and please tell me what you think of that. You can leave a comment on the blog or here on YouTube, and I would really appreciate it. So, I bought 2 books in May. The first one is this Marilynne Robinson's Housekeeping, which I bought for book club, and I actually have not finished reading it yet. I am enjoying it, but it's definitely sort of a slow-moving thing, and we ended up canceling our book club for this month, and so we're going to discuss it later, so that works out pretty well because it's sort of one of those books that's more about the language than about the plot, and so you kind of want to just sort of sit with it and kind of savor it. And then the other thing that I bought last month, you saw this in my Sephora and comic book store haul video, so I won't talk much about it now. It's Lumberjanes. It's the first trade of the series. Apparently they're going to make it into a movie. I found that out recently, so that's cool. I've actually only just read the first issue in it, and I wasn't super riveted, so I haven't progressed forward yet, but I will. And I'm interested to see what it's going to be like because I've heard a lot of really good stuff about it. So maybe it's just not my thing, or maybe I'm just not quite into it yet. We'll find out. Now moving along to the books that I finished in May. Start with a comic. This is Calvin and Hobbes, the 10th anniversary collection. I read Calvin and Hobbes a lot when I was a kid, and when I saw this at the comic book shop, I was like, oh my god, I should get that because my brother has all the copies of our Calvin and Hobbes, and I haven't even looked at them in a very, very long time. So this was a lovely sort of trip down memory lane. It's really cool too because it has these small little areas where the creator, Bill Watterson, he's the writer and the artist behind Calvin and Hobbes, he'll sort of like write about something. Like this page is him talking about the Spaceman Spiff character. And so that's interesting to get his perspective, especially on some of the art and just the way that comics used to be created in the 90s. There was a period when he was making Calvin and Hobbes where all of the Sunday panels, these like extra long panels, they all had to take a certain form. There was like only a limited number of ways that you could do the layout. And then while he was making Calvin and Hobbes, that was when that changed and suddenly you could sort of make it any way you wanted it. Also with just the way that the story takes place, some newspapers didn't order the Sunday edition, and so if he was doing a story arc that takes place over a variety of different panels, the Sunday would need to make sense of the story arc, but the story arc would also need to make sense without the Sunday. I also completed this, Cupcakes and Cashmere at Home. I had pre-ordered this because I am a fan of the blog, but I enjoyed this. I didn't enjoy it as much as her first book. So her first book sort of talks about all the different aspects that her blog is about. So it talks about like decorating, fashion, food, entertaining, all of that sort of organized by seasons. And this one is all about the home, and it just kind of felt to me like it didn't have quite as much value as the last book. A lot of it is sort of a tour of her home, which I feel like is the kind of thing that works better on a blog than in a book where you're trying to like actually extrapolate this information for your own home. And then there were also, I was just surprised by the number of first run errors. There were like 2 or 3 really glaringly obvious ones. Like at one point she talks about this container that she keeps her utensils in her kitchen and how beautiful it is, and she says like this container, and it's really clear that the image there was supposed to be of that container, and then at some point they changed their minds and they made it a different image, and then they didn't change up the copy. And that just annoys me when you've got a book that's so beautifully designed and put together but I still enjoyed it. I mean, I'm keeping it. It's really beautiful. This guy, I can barely even talk about. You've probably heard me mention before the KonMari method of tidying your home. I have a post about it on my blog that I'll link down below. And it's just this amazing book. You've probably heard about it other places as well because it's a bestseller, and it's translated from the Japanese, and it's just a lot of really great ideas about how to rethink what things you actually need to own so that your entire home will be more tidy, more full of things that you love, practical things, beautiful things, and just sort of completely taking control of that aspect of your life. And I just absolutely loved it, and you can hear more about this specific method in that blog post, so I will link that. There was also another comic that I read in May. It's called Beautiful Darkness. I'll put up a little picture of it here. I actually already sold it to Half Price Books, so I don't have it with me. It was definitely interesting. It was very dark in a way that I oftentimes like. It was almost a little too dark for me, and it also had a little bit lacking in terms of like wanting more character development and more explanation of the context of everything that's happening, which is a problem that I find sometimes with comics, and maybe that just has to do with me readjusting my expectations based on the way that other books have more time to develop characters. I don't know, but then I also feel like some comics are really good at developing characters, so then I think, well, I don't want to just write off this as something that comics don't do very well. So I had a couple issues with it, but overall I thought it was really, really creative and interesting. It basically takes the sort of like flower fairy, like tiny little fairy tiny guys idea and inverts it in this really creepy way that is kind of excellent. And that was also translated from the French, so that the fact that it was in translation might have a tiny bit to do with some of its shortcomings, so I would give it that caveat. And then the final book that I finished in May is Lolita. I did start this book back before New Year's, so it took a long time, and part of that was just the emotional intensity of the story, and a big part of that was how complicated the prose was, and just the fact that it's the kind of book that you really need to be in the right mood to read. That being said, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was incredible. The writing style is something that you almost can't even explain. It's like the narrator is this really flowery, ridiculous guy who speaks in this way where his language is just like, it's funny, and at the same time you're like creeped out, and it's just, you have all these amazing conflicting emotions happening, and it's just really, really, really unique. I've never read anything like this before. And so I kind of feel like if you are a reader, like regardless of what you like, you should probably at least pick it up and give it a chance, because if you want to read something that's unlike anything you've ever read before, I'm guaranteeing Lolita will be that for you. It might not be your thing, but it will be different. So make it that what you will. And that's the end of May Ins and Outs. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments, on the blog, here on YouTube. Please like this video. Please subscribe on the blog, here on YouTube. That would help me a ton.